They felt it, before language, before civilization, before us. Love is older than you think. The brain structures responsible for romantic attachment, the VTA and nucleus accumbens, predate Homo sapiens by millions of years, buried deep in our most ancient neural architecture. These structures appear in species that existed long before the first human ever drew breath, which means the neurological capacity for love, the actual hardware, was never uniquely ours to begin with. And when scientists started examining ancient burials more carefully, what they found forced them to completely rethink human emotional history. Skeletal remains have been found of ancient humans buried together, embracing, who came from rival groups with distinct biological markers and cultural origins. Love, it appears, crossed tribal lines long before diplomacy did. Anthropologist Helen Fisher has argued that pair bonding served as a cross-tribal peace mechanism, reducing conflict, building alliances, and merging genetic resources across otherwise hostile boundaries. Love wasn't just a feeling between two people. It may have been one of our earliest tools for collective survival. But survival stories get even stranger when you look at Neanderthals. The fossil record shows Neanderthals who survived catastrophic injuries, broken bones, lost limbs, for years dependent entirely on others who chose to keep feeding and protecting them. These individuals offered no reproductive benefit, no hunting utility, no survival return, and yet they were cared for anyway, for years. Paleoanthropologist Eric Trinkhaus studied Shanidar I, a Neanderthal male, who had a crushed eye socket, a withered arm, and severe leg damage, all fully healed. He lived for decades past those injuries. Someone chose him, repeatedly, and in that same Shanidar cave, something even more extraordinary was buried. Pollen analysis revealed deliberate flower placement in a Neanderthal grave, 60,000 years old. The same species we once dismissed as brutish was performing rituals of tenderness before modern humans had even taken over the earth. Then the ancient DNA evidence arrived, and it changed everything. Modern non-African humans carry between 1 and 4% Neanderthal DNA, and many carry Denisovan DNA too, a separate archaic human species. This didn't happen once. Genetic models show repeated interbreeding across tens of thousands of years. These were not accidental encounters. These were chosen. The question scientists are now seriously asking is whether interspecies attraction was real, consciously felt, and deliberately pursued across generations and species boundaries. Researcher Svante Pääbo, who won the Nobel Prize for ancient DNA research, confirmed the genetic mixing was complex, layered, and happened in multiple waves across millennia. That's not a collision. That's a relationship, sustained across time. And if their brains contained the same dopamine reward circuits ours do, then what they felt when they chose each other may not have been so different from what you feel. Now consider one burial found in China, dated to 4,800 years ago, a mother. Forensic analysis of her bones showed she was already dying when she was buried. Her body was positioned, deliberately curled around her infant child. The positioning was not random. Researchers determined she had chosen her final pose. This reframes ancient love entirely, not sentiment, sacrifice. She used the last moments of her physical agency to become a shield, and the instinct driving her was neurologically identical to what drives a parent today. The same brain circuits, the same biochemical fire, separated by nearly 5,000 years. What the evidence now suggests is that love was never an invention of civilization. It was an inheritance, passed forward through millions of years of evolutionary memory. Dopamine, the chemical at the core of romantic longing, is 50 million years old as a reward signal. The neurochemical experience of wanting someone, craving their presence, is ancient beyond comprehension. And ancient humans felt that pull, across rival tribes, across species, across death itself. Researchers now argue that love may predate not just language, but conscious self-reflection entirely. Prairie voles, which pair bond for life, share nearly identical bonding neurochemistry with humans, and the oxytocin receptor distribution in their brains mirrors ours in ways science is still mapping. Love, or something functionally identical to it, runs through the mammalian family tree like a spine. We didn't create love, we just learned to name it. And before we named it, they were already living it, leaving marks, caring for the broken, placing flowers on graves, and choosing each other when no survival logic required it. The heart, metaphorically and neurologically, is the oldest organ we carry. Somewhere in a cave 60,000 years ago, two beings sat close enough to share warmth, and their ventral tegmental areas lit up with dopamine in exactly the way yours does right now. The feeling you call love, that specific hunger, has been felt for longer than our species has existed. Every ancient burial tells the same story beneath the scientific language. Someone mattered to someone else. Love is not a human invention. It is a biological force so persistent it survived mass extinctions, species mergers, and the collapse of entire civilizations. The real question was never whether ancient humans fell in love. The real question is whether we were ever different enough for it to matter. They sat around fires. They grieved their dead. They chose each other. And across 60,000 years of silence, the bones still say so. But let's be precise about what that means neurochemically. The VTA doesn't just register pleasure, it registers specifically the presence of a chosen individual, firing differently, more intensely, more selectively than it does for any other reward stimulus. This selectivity, the neurological preference for one specific other, evolved before our genus existed, which means the capacity for romantic fixation on a single individual is not a human achievement. It is an ancient inheritance our brains received and never modified beyond what evolution had already built. Return to the Shanidar flowers for a moment, because the scientific debate around them matters. Some researchers argued the pollen was deposited by burrowing animals, not placed deliberately by grieving hands. But the species identified bloom together only in spring, suggesting seasonal, deliberate selection, not random contamination. Someone in a cold cave 60,000 years ago chose flowers for the dead, chose color, chose beauty. That single act places Neanderthal emotional life firmly outside the boundaries of pure survival logic. Now consider the Denisovans, a species we didn't even know existed until 2010. Their DNA survives in living humans today, not as contamination, but as chosen inheritance. These were beings who looked different, moved differently, almost certainly communicated differently. And across thousands of years, Homo sapiens kept choosing them anyway. The frequency and distribution of that DNA argues against isolated accidents. It argues for pattern, for preference. Whether that preference felt like love in any form we would recognize, science cannot say with certainty. But it felt like something, repeated across millennia, encoded in the genomes of their descendants. And then there is the mother in China, whose story contains a detailed science almost buried. She was not placed in that position after death. Forensic reconstruction confirmed she arranged herself. Her last conscious physical act was to become architecture, a shelter built from her own dying body. That instinct is not learned. It is not cultural. It fires from neural structures older than language itself. When those she loved were threatened, her brain fused attachment and survival into one irreversible gesture. Love at that depth is not sentiment. It is load-bearing. It holds shape even when the body fails. 5 separate data points, 5 separate species and burial sites, 5,000 miles and 60,000 years apart, and every one of them converges on the same conclusion. Something in living creatures, long before us, long before our words for it, reached toward another and chose to stay.